So here we are on Tuesday, January 12th. Um, Again, I want to start today with just a little bit of kind of wisdom. And the kind of theme for these past 2 days, yesterday, today, and what's been going on since last Wednesday is how do we how do we interact with someone who, from our perspective, thinks 2 plus 2 is 5? And so I have a little riddle for you. When does 2 plus 2 equal 4, 5, and it doesn't matter? When does 2 plus 2 equal 4? When does 2 plus 2 equal 5? And when does it not matter? And the answer is whenever you're talking to someone who is kind of in a extreme mindset. When someone's in an extreme mindset and they perceive your mindset as extreme and you perceive their mindset as extreme, then 2 plus 2 will never equal 4. It just won't. The reason for that is because when you're in an extreme mindset, you only perceive your own sense of rightness. And in the intellect, when you only perceive your own sense of rightness, any attempt by someone else to break into that will just reinforce that sense of rightness. So you cannot use your intellect to get someone to think 2 plus 2 is 4. You just have to accept that for them, your 2 plus 2 is 5. So you just have to accept that. That doesn't mean you can't do anything. It just means you have to accept that. So when it doesn't matter is when you're interacting with that person, you grasp very quickly that for you 2 plus 2 is 4, but for them 2 plus 2 is 5. You immediately shift away from the intellect. You immediately shift from trying to get them to see your point or even trying to see theirs, and you shift into the body. And by that I mean you shift into the present moment. You shift into a mindset of, okay, let me move away from the intellect and connect to the heart. How do you do that? Okay, the way you do that is you, instead of focusing on the intellect, you bring the conversation into a feeling. Okay, and you can start with emotion. But you could say like, oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Okay. Whenever I get into a sense of kind of, things are moving here, things are moving there, things are complex, things are this, things are that, things are big, things are just. Whenever I get into that, I can totally feel it in my body. I feel it here. I feel it in my shoulders. I feel it in my head. I just, and gosh, I'm like you. I don't know what the heck's going on. Or when I get really excited about something, or whatever. You shift from intellect into the body. Emotions are a great place to go. You go to the emotion. You start describing emotion. You describe emotion using its qualities, what it feels like, where it's located, how intense it is, its directions, its depth, its size. You shift into that, and then you start talking about that, and then you look for common ground there. Have you ever felt that? Does that resonate with you? Does that make any sense what I'm saying? You move totally out of the intellect to get in there. So that's when you get to the place where what 2 plus 2 is doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what it is. And that's when you get to the place where you try to see yourself in the extreme mindset. And once you can see yourself in the other, okay, that's when the heart opens, and that's when the magic happens. The magic doesn't happen until you get to that place. Once you get to the heart open place, then you can start to have a conversation, and you can take the conversation in any direction you want, and then you can start finding 2 plus 2 equals 4 together. But until then, you can't go to the intellect. So just wanted to put that out there as just a word of wisdom. And I'm gonna start our streams this way from now on. Most days, I guess. All right. So let's get to the main point of today. The main point of today is finding a seat that feels good for you, finding your seated posture, what seat feels good to you. And it's part one. And so it's two parts, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you seats in a chair, or seats in a chair, seats on a cushion, seats on a cushion. And then tomorrow we'll go and we'll look at the actual meditation cushion. But today we're going to look at different posture, or finding your seat on like a stool or just a regular seat. But before we do that, let's go over what it means to find your proper posture. So here's your firearm. You're looking for your posture here. You already know this as a marksman, but you've got your ground, which is your feet. You've got your pelvis, which are your hips. You've got your core. You've got your heart space, shoulder blades. You've got your throat. You've got the top of your head. Okay? So when you have assessed all these spaces, remember there's 6: ground, pelvis, core, heart, throat, head. Then you've got a good foundation for moving and like aiming the weapon. Okay? You have to account for your body. Everybody knows that. You just have to. You can't leave your body out or you're not going to hit anything. You're taught this in basic marksmanship training. You know this stuff, but you've probably never looked at it in the context of seated meditation. So here's a long gun. You're finding your ground, your pelvis, your core, your heart, your throat, top of your head, and there's all kinds of different styles here that you like. But you've done this. If you're a marksman, you've done this with firearms. And so what we're doing here is we're just giving you the tools to shift it. Just shift it to a seated posture. So let's go to a stool. All right. So same thing. Sit. Ground, that's your feet. It's also your rear end, right? So ground is not just feet. Ground is what's touching something. This makes sense later on in the context of working out and how to apply this style of mindfulness to anything. But your ground is your feet. Now come to your pelvis. Okay. Now see how I'm moving a little bit? I'm kind of tucking and untucking my tailbone. By creating a little bit of movement, you're creating a little bit of feedback, you're creating a little bit of communication, and you're just kind of moving into each space with a sense of curiosity, a sense of, let me learn here. Because what you're looking for as you do this, because every single time you sit, you're not going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit and I'm going to do all this stuff. What you're looking for are cues, little cues that kind of make sense to you. These little cues that you're like, oh, yeah. Okay, that's this cue, or I got to set this up, or I got to set this up. And right now you're finding them. You're finding those cues. But once you found them, you'll just default to them. So anyway, ground, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, head. So this right here is totally acceptable. Totally fine. Ground, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, head. And you say this. I guide this when I'll show you when we actually start practicing on every day. But when you're doing it on your own, or when you're at the bar or wherever, I guess you wouldn't be at the bar now, but wherever you are in your head, you can literally just go ground, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, head. You just say that in your mind. Okay? So this is a stool. This is just a chair. And this is totally fine. It is absolutely fine to use a chair to practice. You do not need a meditation cushion. You do not have to sit on the floor. Those pieces are absolutely unnecessary. The only thing that matters is that you create an environment where your mind is focused on the present moment, and then you connect with your body. You have to do that. You can't leave it out. So you connect with your body. How your body is seated, whether it's in a stool or a chair or on a cushion, that's secondary. That's of secondary importance. So you can sit in this chair. don't know if you can see this, but I've got my back away from the chair. You might be able to see how I'm not seated exactly here. This is fine too. This is totally fine too. This is just kind of a little bit more of core engagement. Again, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do this at all. Totally fine if you don't. So you're here. Feet, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, head. Cues for comfort. What's comfortable? Like sitting like this is very comfortable. Now what I'm doing with my hands is I typically do this. I put my fingers together and just sit them like this. It feels more connected. It doesn't feel so just kind of haphazard. It just feels nice to do this. You can do this if you want. It's up to you. But here you go. Ground, pelvis, core, heart, throat, head. Okay? Looking for the things that show you you're comfortable. We call these your cues for comfort. When I guide the practice, I'll say, okay, now follow your cues to comfort. Is there anything you can do to get 2 to 5% more comfortable? One more thing I'll say, then we'll finish up, is feel free to move at these spots. Like little movements, like just small little movements. I'm starting to really settle here. There you go, coffee. These little subtle movements are really great. They're really great for just pinging the region, right? So if you're pinging your pelvis, you can kind of shift your pelvis around. Core is often like a compression or an expansion, so kind of notice that. And then move around into shoulder blades. Always come into the jaw, move that around. And move around just slightly with the head. Doesn't have to be a lot, but adding a little bit of movement kind of creates that sense of feedback. And then here you are. You've established a good seated posture, one that is communicative between you and your body, and one that you can sustain comfortably. You want to be able to sustain this position comfortably. If you're uncomfortable, if you've seen pictures of people seated in a particular way, and you're like, I got to get to that, that's going to mess you up. Don't worry about that stuff. None of that matters. What matters in the practice is getting comfortable, creating a place that you can sustain, and it's easy, and it's, oh man, I get the coffee. It's easy, and you can relax with. So that's it. That's the lesson for today. Okay? So let me just reiterate the last thing. The thing you want to be thinking about with the body is interacting with the body in chunks. Your feet or your ground, your pelvis, your core, your heart space, your throat, your head. Okay, 6 chunks. You think about it in chunks. Looking for your cues for comfort. It's okay to sit in a chair. It's okay to sit on a stool. It's okay to sit on a bench. Talked to one guy. He was like, I could sit on a 5-gallon water container. I was like, yep, totally. So lots of options, yeah. So I hope you have a great day. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out, and see you tomorrow. Later, Armor Down.